whoever knew that the job of a Head Start director would be so complex? Whoever knew that one of your duties as a Head Start director would be managing real estate, negotiating mortgages. And I was also thinking, there are things that, as a director, unlike Alan, we went into education because we loved kids, right? Not that he doesn't love children, but and I don't know how many of us came into the profession with a sound fiscal background. And I can certainly say, except for buying and selling my own home, I had no experience in the real estate market. And I also think about things I like to do, and I like to be creative about programming. I don't particularly love all the fiscal aspects of it, and some of them are quite hard. And I have to say early on, I knew nothing about real estate. And then I think about, it's not just about the director. I mean, what's the infrastructure the program needs to have to support these complex fiscal operations? And then I think about the board, and many years ago, the Head Start reauthorization, someone was very smart and said, you know, a board should have a fiscal expert. So what is the board's responsibility? How much knowledge do they have to have? So I'm just going to throw that out because I think it is complex. Where do you put your resources to make sure that you can do the fiscal management and property management well? So I'm just going to throw it out, and I don't, Belinda or Alan, whoever wants to start.
You know, Anne, I think I'm going to start and just focus on financial management, and then I'm going to shift over and ask Alan to talk more about property issues. You know, the financial management and the capacity of an organization to make good use of its funds is really foundational to the kind of creative, impactful programming that you're talking about. So if you are great at developing a budget, if you're strong in your community ties and you're able to generate meaningful non-federal match, all those things feed into that high quality programming. And I'll just tell a little bit of a story around that. You know, I think financial management is kind of like our recent camping trip to Glacier National Park. We live just outside of Glacier National Park. And we had this lovely hike planned, and it went up to an overlook and then down to a hidden lake. So up to the overlook and down to the hidden lake was the plan. And we got as far as the overlook, and there was a big sign on the trail that said closed due to bear activity. And so here we were, we had this great plan. We hiked quite a ways down the road, and then all of a sudden something changed. And that's really what financial management is like. It is planning well so that you can accomplish everything you possibly can, but recognizing that there are going to be stumbling blocks and you need to be responsive to the kinds of changes that will impact every budget. And then you take that kind of creative thinking, but anchor it in a strong knowledge of those basic requirements for effective financial management. You have to know the 40+ requirements in the Head Start Act that are fiscal in nature. You have to recognize that the governing body is fiscally responsible for the Head Start grant, and that they need the kind of training that will allow them to feel empowered and knowledgeable when they make those important financial decisions. You have to be familiar with the Head Start program performance standards, particularly around property, but also around things like having a risk assessment and management strategy, right? And then also, last but certainly not least, the very specific uniform guidance. So Part 75, the very detailed fiscal requirements that go along with receiving Head Start funds, so that you know you have to have certain elements in a financial management system. They have to be written down and they have to be fully implemented. So that concept of being a creative fiscal thinker, being responsive to change, but managing grounded in those specific requirements that go along with Head Start funding is really critical. And Anne, you have any thoughts after that? And then we'll maybe turn it over to Alan to talk about a little more about property.
Well, one, I was stunned when you said 40 regulations. And I do think about, particularly when things are in the act, the federal government has a way of writing things that can be really challenging. And any advice about how that stuff can get broken down or distilled so people like me can understand it more easily.
There's not an easy way to do that. The way that I learned that years ago when I first came to Head Start and looked at all these things and said, oh my gosh, this is something completely new to me. How am I going to figure this out? Was I got my highlighter out and I just started going through the Head Start Act, and I highlighted every area that had a fiscal implication. Everything from the executive level 2 limitation, the requirement of complying with the Davis-Bacon Act, the rights and responsibilities of the policy council, the governing body, all that information that needs to be shared on a monthly basis with governing entities. I went through and highlighted all that. And I think that's the hard work you have to do. There's no real easy way to do that. There are certainly certain sections of the Head Start Act, like Section 642, that talk a lot about the requirements of getting information to your governing entities, of capacitating those who sit on those entities to be able to do their fiscal work. But nothing substitutes for just a careful read of the Head Start Act. And certainly that as you look at the Head Start program performance standards, there are not a lot of specifically fiscal requirements in the Head Start program performance standards. Most of them are actually in the Act and then just repeated in the performance standards. But things like non-federal match requirements, that 20% that grantees have to generate locally, as well as things like the administrative cost limitation, which in Head Start is just 15%. So one of the important things about focusing on the Head Start Act is that it's going to tell you the financial requirements that are unique to Head Start. I would say that over the years, we have seen the quality and the capacity of fiscal officers and fiscal staff in Head Start organizations grow tremendously. The 2016 performance standards require a degree, an accounting degree or something equivalent to that for a fiscal officer. So, we're seeing this growth in capacity over the years, which I think is an extraordinary thing in Head Start. Head Start is not a small business. I believe the average Head Start award now is well over $3 million. There are 2,000 or so awards given in any year, and that's not even counting the money that's given out for special things like disaster recovery or the response to COVID-19. So we're talking about a lot of money. You can't do this with just a good heart. You have to also have the knowledge to go along with it.